Well, district-wide, we scored about 6.6% of the vote, and it breaks down to 7.3% in the city, and then about 5% in that suburban outskirt of the district. And by the way, the suburban parts had a disproportionately higher turnout because they had other elections going on that brought people out to the polls. So we did better than a Green Party candidate typically does in a congressional race, and given the fact that we only had 5 weeks to organize coming out of that primary, I think it was a really phenomenal result. I mean, it showed that we were able to build momentum, and if we had an extra month or 2 months, I really think this thing would have exploded onto the scene. In that last week, we had new volunteers coming in, we had new donations coming in, we had people calling that had seen me on Chicago Tonight or some other news show that were interested in the campaign. And what inspired me is you had people that said, I'd never even thought about supporting a Green until now. That we were bringing people, you know, over that edge into third-party land. I knew that if you were going to win the district, you'd have to do so as a Democrat. And while I don't see eye to eye with the mainstream of the party, you know, there are a handful of populist Democrats out there at various levels, and you know, so I just thought, well, maybe I can sneak in, maybe all the machine candidates will divide the vote and we can make a progressive movement out of this. But there really wasn't the time. You know, I didn't have the resources or the time to build that movement from scratch, which was what I was trying to do. But with the Green Party, you know, it was very feasible to get on the ballot as the Green candidate. It would probably make winning in the district nearly impossible, but at least I'd have 5 more weeks to get my name and get my message out there and to inject these progressive values into the debate. Well, I was involved with Peace Action, formerly Sane Freeze, which is the nation's largest nuclear disarmament organization, first on a door-to-door basis. I know a lot of people have canvassed before. You know, you see those ads, work for the environment, work for peace, and you take off a little thing with the phone number on it, and then you find out that you have to go door to door raising money. So I actually started at that level, but hung on and rose, and eventually became the manager of the Chicago office for Peace Action. So while either down at Urbana, where I did my studies, or in Chicago, I was involved in organizing protest around the anti-war movement when the Iraq War first started and the Afghanistan War first started. I was involved in lobbying, meeting with congressmen, authoring articles about these issues, and I began this work right in those dark days after September 11th. I mean, I was already involved politically before then, but after 9/11, the entire country turned into this, you know, militaristic, simplistic trance. You know, people were unwilling to criticize the powers that be. I think it was 10% of the nation was against the war in Afghanistan. So it was really dark times. But we were given a great gift, which is the fact that the president was an idiot, and it turned people against him really quickly. And we were able to build the biggest anti-war movement the country's seen since Vietnam in the lead up to the Iraq War. And unfortunately, all that got deflated by this anybody but Bush phenomenon in 2004, when everybody left the anti-war movement to go support the pro-war Democrat John Kerry. And again in 2008, when the anti-war movement was again deflated as people went to support the pro-war Barack Obama. So frustrated by all this, I told myself, well, if people are so into elections, fine, I'll run an election. Right back in my home district, you know, the day after the election, I saw Rahm Emanuel get the chief of staff position, and I was like, wow, that's my home district, let's go back home and see if we can't organize something. And we got 5 weeks. 5 weeks. It begins today, tonight. I want everybody to sign up to volunteer. Sign up to fight the machine. What went wrong is we didn't at least beat the Republican. And she was not worthy of any Republican votes. The Republican Party at the national level didn't support her at all. She had to raise all her funds by herself. But unfortunately, the power of the two institutional parties is overwhelming. People go to the polls and vote for the party they've always voted for.
Because the Greens are going to turn out.
That's true.
We're politically motivated.
It's upsetting to not see us at least register in second. I really think that we could have revolutionized the way politics works in Chicago if people saw that the Greens were the second party. And the other thing is the lack of organizational support by the Illinois Green Party. I mean, why have a party? Why participate in elections if you can't get behind your candidates? It truly is disgusting. We've got plenty of rank and file support, individual members of the party who donated, who helped out. But of course, that's going to happen. But the state party as an institution provided zero financial support and zero organizational support. It was a struggle to even get us mentioned in newsletters and on the websites. All these things that would be automatic if I were the Democrat or Republican candidate didn't happen. The Green Party really needs to rise to the occasion. I mean, they've had some success before in various capacities. Here in Illinois, of course, they ran over 10% statewide against Blagojevich. And that's a sign that people are increasingly frustrated with the two mainstream parties. Increasingly, people are seeing that the differences between the two major parties are very small, that they both represent corporate interest, they both represent war and empire. They both represent a continuation of the status quo on all but aesthetic issues, what Ralph Nader calls gonad politics. Issues that, while they're important, they should not be the core issues. Our core issues need to be empire and the economy. And increasingly people are flocking to the Greens. I mean, if we could get 7% in 5 weeks' time with no organization behind us, a campaign manager that's, staying here in the office, sleeping on an inflatable mattress. That shows that the willingness to go with a more populist political leader is there. And we need to follow up and be organized about it. Say that we're willing to prop up this movement. And if they do that, they will turn into, instead of being that laughing stock, 3, 4, 5%, they'll turn into a foundational party. They'll become the second party here in Chicago and other inner city areas, and we can start to threaten the two-party establishment. It's very trying as an intelligent person sometimes to navigate this trivial culture, and I went away to France to do my graduate studies after having been involved as an activist. And it was very inspiring to be in a culture that, while it's still capitalistic, while there's still the capitalist niceties, you're still allowed to be intelligent, you're still allowed to criticize, you're still allowed to go out on the streets and protest, and they do so very effectively. You're still allowed to speak truth to power and do so effectively. And that inspired me to come back here and to not be afraid. I think a lot of progressives, a lot of leftists are afraid, maybe rightly so, because of the immense police force that's often used at protest. But you lose. You lose if you're afraid. So you got to go out there, get your voice out there, not be afraid. Don't compromise, because you can't compromise war with peace. You can't compromise no banker bailouts with some banker bailouts. Just hold your ground and keep your head high. And I think that's what we did, and that's why we accomplished 7% of the vote in just 5 weeks' time.